What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the Conquer Athlete podcast. As I say that, my wife is just glaring at me because I've banished her to the bedroom so the baby doesn't cry. Because I'm podcasting in my house today. Thanks everybody for
He's not
joining.
in his shed.
Yeah. Dude, people hate on the shed.
Who
They're
hates on the
like,
shed? Who hates on the shed?
dude, the internet.
The
They
internet
got nothing better
sucks.
to hate on.
Internet fucking sucks. How do you hate on a shed? Sheds are fucking as American as apple pie.
I mean, I think so. Like, I live in Idaho, dude. Like, a shed is a
Everyone,
podcast studio.
everybody needs a good shed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most people need sheds for things like lawnmowers and weed whackers. I podcast in it. I also
You
have a
podcasting.
lawnmower in it.
Listen, you got to do what you got to do, and the shed's a place to do things.
It is. It is. Yeah. Never mind. So, the Conquer Athlete podcast brought to you by the Coach RX Podcast Network. We're going to keep
Yes.
talking about it.
We're gonna
If
keep
you
talking about
enjoy
it.
fitness content, check them out. Lots of good podcasts on there. Give Candace a follow. She'll love it, especially if you are a coach or a business owner. We're going to shout out her podcast as well. She's running a podcast all about marketing for fitness professionals. So if you haven't checked that one out, I would definitely check that one out because I know she doesn't get any love, and Candace is awesome.
If you guys don't follow Candace and you don't support her, just shame on you for being a poor human.
That was way nicer than it could have been.
You know, are we gonna go live? People asked us to go live, but honestly, I'm nervous to go live with you, Ryan.
I think you should be.
Because I feel like if we go live, you would not purposely, but you wouldn't hold back as you shouldn't. And I think some things could be controversial, maybe, rub people a certain way.
Listen, I know nothing about making viral content, and the only way in my mind to make viral content is you have to say controversial things.
God, you're gonna say fucking political stuff and people fucking lose their minds. People have lost the ability to have a conversation with someone that has a different opinion than them, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think the last month and a half has proven that. Political assassinations are not cool.
Yeah, didn't someone have a sign that said "Make assassinations cool again"?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy.
I think
How would
it's
someone
more
have a
than,
sign like that's like saying, "Hey, let's just kill people and it'll be cool."
yeah. Well, I think that's when you know that your argument has no actual weight to it. So that's the only option.
Yeah,
We shouldn't go down this rabbit hole.
I mean, listen, we can. I'm just saying that I'll state the claim that political views expressed by people on the show aren't the political views of Conquer. It's just people have political views. So if people are going to associate a view and opinion with Conquer itself and get upset, well, then you need to look at yourself in the mirror and I'll stop there. But you need to look at yourself in the mirror. Right, I feel like Christina's giving you eyes right now. I feel like the wife is giving you eyes, but like Ryan,
No,
don't. Okay.
no, she left the room. She knows she can't control what comes out of my mouth. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. But she did like our last podcast, so there's that. So I got that going for me.
What did we talk about in the last podcast besides the topic?
Tom Cruise eating babies.
Tom Cruise. Yeah.
The fountain of youth.
Fountain of youth. You know, I was thinking about the other day. I feel like some people might agree with me, some people not, but sometimes I look at people and the world and people's responses. I'm like, this can't be real. Like we're ants in an ant farm being studied by a higher power of like how crazy and stupid we can become over time. Like Horton Hears a Who, except instead of someone trying to protect us, they're like, oh my God, look at this group of things I've created and how there's a virus. They're destroying everything and each other.
So you believe it's an alien life form puppeteering the planet?
Bro, sometimes based off how we act and respond to situations, I'm like, we can't be fucking real.
The Matrix, bro.
Have you ever read the book Horton Hears a Who? No?
Never heard of it.
I think Dr. Seuss is a hidden genius. Not hidden, because he's not hidden. He's a fucking genius. You read, it's like Dr. Seuss to me is like The Simpsons. You know how The Simpsons predicted like 8 million things in the future on the show? You read a Dr. Seuss book and you're like, every single one of his books was written for adults and they need to fucking read this shit to get this life together.
I'm
Like
just
read
thinking,
the Dr.
I'm
Seuss
just,
book, All the Places You Will Go.
what about like green eggs and ham?
Read it
What is
again.
that?
There's a message in there.
How high do I have to be for this?
No, bro, I'm telling you, man. Go read All the Places You Will Go. Read that shit again, and you'll be
Okay.
like, "Good God, this guy is fucking right."
Okay.
He's an
I'm more
American
leaning
fucking.
towards Orwell 1984. That's where I'm at. But hey, I'm
Dr.
good
Seuss.
either way. I'll go
Dr.
either way.
Seuss.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cat in the Hat. Chaos. Chaos theory.
Yeah. Chaos theory I'm familiar with for sure.
It's Cat in the Hat.
I would love to speak more eloquently about this, but I definitely am not well researched on Cat in the Hat.
All right. I want you to read one Dr. Seuss book before our next call, if you can, if you have time.
Yeah, for sure. I'll read it with my 6-year-old, and he and I will talk about chaos theory.
Every time I hear chaos theory, I think of Jurassic Park and who's the actor?
Dr. Malcolm?
No, it wasn't Dr. Malcolm. The guy that puts a drop of water on her hand, talking about chaos theory. He's trying to have sex with her. That's Malcolm. What's his real name? He was also the dude in
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, The Fly. Remember The Fly?
Yeah,
that shit was weird.
it was a great movie.
The Fly? Or
No,
Jurassic Park?
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. The Fly. Good God, it's a weird movie. What
It's
else can we
Ray.
ramble? What else can we ramble upon, Ryan, before we get serious?
What else can we ramble on? I mean, I'm happy to make the announcement that Team 1124 is back for a third year. Well, half of them at least. And we're running it back.
Tyler's running it back.
Tyler's running it back. He sold his soul, had to buy Callie a puppy, but we are running it back. We got 2 new team that not going to drop names just yet, but they are committed. They are on board, and we are running it back.
I'm a little disappointed though.
Well, yes, because I think Tyler legit could have.
Yeah, I wanted Tyler to go Indie Masters.
I agree.
Tyler, if you're hearing this, you should have bought her 2 fucking puppies and maybe upgraded a ring, but you should have went fucking Indie Masters. I think you could have podiumed.
He's emotionally soft isn't the right word. Malleable. So be nice to what you're going to say. We're back for another year. We didn't hang him up just yet, so we'll take what we can get.
I'm gonna take it. Listen, I'm gonna take what I can get. I'm not gonna get upset. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that move. But okay, so who is the person returning with him?
The Meat Nugget, which cool nickname, whatever. I have dubbed her the Meat Missile.
Can we get T-shirts?
Bro, she sells T-shirts. Are you kidding me? She is.
Do they say the Meat Nugget?
Yeah, I have never felt more like the paparazzi was following me when I was walking down the street with the Meat Nugget. That girl gets so much love, and rightfully so. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met.
I would want to wear a Meat Nugget shirt.
We can probably make that happen for sure.
Okay, so they have a guy and a girl coming on board. What happened to the other guy? What was his name?
Riley. I think he just decided to move on, do something different. Not sure what his. Believe he's newly engaged. So
congratulations.
Newly engaged, I believe, and running a gym, doing his thing. So I don't know the full context of the story, but that's where we're at.
Okay, I'm excited to hear who the other 2 people are. Are you gonna have full? Are you gonna have full control yet, or what? Get these fuckers on the podium?
We'll see. It's the wheels of control are being moved. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the wheels of control. So it almost be like the levers of control.
Semantics, bro. Semantics.
Okay. Fair point.
Good thing we're not live. We can edit whatever we need.
We're not editing anything.
All right. Let's do this because this is a good one. I feel like you're really going to like this one. I'm excited to talk about this one. I want to talk today progressive overload more than just adding weight. This one, I think, especially, we're a CrossFit dominant podcast. But when you start getting into the world of progressive overload, it's a foundational principle within training methodology. Its application is a little bit clearer when you start getting in sports like powerlifting or weightlifting. And when you start getting into CrossFit, progressive overload starts looking more like progressive stimulus. Whoa. And I want to talk about what that means. I would love to take credit for that.
Whoa.
If I was a piece of shit, I would 100% take credit for that, but I stole it from the crew over at Prescript, who I just took one of their courses. And Jordan Shallow, shout out, you're a G. I would love to have you on the podcast. Talks about progressive stimulus and how we have to evolve from this idea of like purely load as a progressive overload strategy. And
I feel like you went from fucking 6 to midnight with this topic, so I'd love for you to start.
yeah, I mean,
Like I think if you had gray sweatpants and a backwards cap on, like you'd just be hanging clothes from your waist.
okay, I don't entirely get the reference, but that's okay. Yeah, so I mean, like progressive overload, when you break it down in more traditional context, it's really this idea of progressively increasing, whether it be training load or really, I think what it comes down to fundamentally is a progressive overloading of stress,
Mhm.
right? And for newer coaches out there who are maybe just learning training principles or, are kind of reading foundational books, when you see progressive overload, you tend to think the only strategy is adding weight. And anybody that's been in the game for any period of time knows that that window starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And especially the more advanced an athlete gets. And when you really start looking at movement and mechanics, oftentimes just adding load to a movement, it actually puts an athlete at a higher percentage or higher possibility of risk. Like certain things just don't need more load. Maybe they need more muscular endurance, or maybe they need isometrics or, tempo training or things like that. And when you start expanding this like circle, kind of blowing it out to the different training methods or training possibilities of what you could overload with to create stress, it opens up a whole different universe of training opportunities. But I think we get so locked into this idea of just load that we forget to look at other areas of how to create stress, because that's realistically all we're trying to do. Is we're trying to take an athlete who is sitting at their level of homeostasis, add a stress to them so they can stress the system, hopefully go through the recovery process, and then create a new adaptation, which creates a new level of homeostasis, right? So whatever, that's my little rant, but like I've got a couple things written down of what I think CrossFitters could focus on more to create progressive stimulus, but I want to hear what you think.
Bro, fuck what I think. You're flowing. Keep fucking flowing.
All
You're like
right.
you're like Eminem and fucking 8 Mile just spitting right now, and I'm just trying to be fucking Future in the back hyping you up
I
with the
think
mob,
Future's
with
cool.
the fucking Mob Deep beat just fucking going right now
All
for
right.
you.
All right. Well, all right, so we talked about load being one option of, progressive overload, right? And that 100% stands true, especially for like beginner and intermediate athletes. Like we can use load as a strategy to progressively stress. Outside of that, and like I was thinking to myself, I was like, all right, well, like CrossFit it already does it. Like from a methodology standpoint, the thing that CrossFit does really, really well is create variability within stimulus, right? This idea of like constantly varied, constantly changing movement. So to me, the methodology actually checks half the boxes, right? Like it offers various stimulus, and stimulus could be variation in time, duration, rest, time under tension. It could be ranges of motion and biomechanical complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the sport itself or the method itself does that. What it does a really shitty job of is the progressive part, right? So for all of my coaches out there that are trying to improve how they coach or how they write programs, this is realistically the area that I think we all could get better at, is the progressive side of it, right? Like if you're following the method is gonna, or the methodology, it's gonna cover a lot of this. What you need to get better is locking in on a specific stimulus that you want to improve and creating a really smart progressive strategy to get your athlete from A to B, right? Not just using load. So I think there's a couple different ways you could do that. You can obviously look at duration, like an increase in duration. So say we're talking about, like endurance training or threshold training or something like that. And a progressive overload strategy, or at least one, is going to be an increase in duration. You start at 5 minutes and you progressively work an athlete to 10 minutes at a prescribed pace, right? So you're stressing the athlete through duration. Or you could go the other way. If you were running intervals, say you were doing 5-minute intervals of a certain pace, you could do 5 minutes, rest 3 minutes, do another one, rest 3 minutes, do another one. If you were going to progressively stress that athlete, you would decrease rest over time, right? So that rest period in between, that keeps a higher level of hormonal stress, higher level of, we lower the cardiovascular recovery time, and that's going to add a progressive overload to the athlete. Looking at time under tension, right? Looking at tempo training, slowly progressing the athlete in time. So making the tempo slower over time, but keeping the weight the same, right? That's just another way to add stress. So I think you can do it there. I think you can do it through different ranges of motion where maybe you're working, the top third of a box squat. And then, you work that for a couple of weeks, you build that up. Then you go, to a half range. Then you go to, almost a 3/4 depth. And that's a way you could progressive overload, like you're stressing the joint mechanics and not just adding load. Or you can look at biomechanical complexity. So things like a single joint movement versus a multi-joint movement. You can look at creating stress through challenging coordination. You can challenge stability, right? Taking it from a bilateral to a unilateral move. Things that require high neuromuscular control, things like snatching, things that require, combinations of coordination, stability, multi-joint, speed, power, strength, like all of that. You start combining some of these qualities that they're going to lead to a higher neuromuscular requirement to, successfully complete the lift. That's another great tool to overload the athlete. Yeah. So there's a lot.
A lot.
Like
You're
there's a
fucking
lot that could go. Yeah. I mean, I took a bunch of notes. On this when I decided to come up with this podcast. I just like grabbed a piece of paper and just started like writing ideas down. But really what I think it comes down to is creating stress and then manipulating stress in a way that is going to, not from the very, very get-go max your athlete out, but it's going to give you this kind of runway approach where you can progressively layer in stress over time to really create strong nervous system adaptations that, when done properly over time, actually lead to less nervous system fatigue, because it's not just these like single hit, super intense things that people just struggle to recover from. Yeah, that's what I got. I'm done with the podcast. I'm shutting it down. If you want to say anything else, go for it.
I don't the podcast. I mean, I don't know. That was great. I don't feel like I need to fucking add anything in that to make myself fucking, try to think like I'm adding something to it. I think you hit all the, I don't think you hit all the points with it. I think the biggest thing people need to keep in mind goes back to exactly what you were saying, and the notes that I was taking came down to three main things. Number one, as a coach, you guys have to understand what your KPIs are for the athlete. Like, what's your goal? What are you trying to do with them, and in what time frame, and across what variables? And then from there, apply the stress to it, right? And Ryan talked about all the ways you can progress something from the basics of, for the intensity and volume, and then progressing the stimulus around that. And if you can do that successfully with your athletes, you can have a lot of success for them. And this is something from programs I've looked at, from people I've spoken to, that is drastically, I don't know, I don't want to make assumptions and say like misunderstood or misapplied, but just not there in a lot of stuff, right? People look at training as almost like a 4-week block or an 8-week block, and then you move on to the next 4-week block or 8-week block. And there's not this progression of things that we're trying to go from. And the idea of progressive overload can go way beyond, especially in mixed modal sports, right? We talk about CrossFit. It can become high rocks. It can become tactical games, whatever it might be. But being able to drive that stimulus down the road and path that you want it to go down is something that we really need to do and understand. And the ceiling of volume and stimulus and stress is directly correlated to the ceiling of the person, right? We can't keep volume, stress, intensity in a box and say 1 + 1 = 2 because it doesn't when humans are involved. But we need to understand what that person's ceiling is and make sure we apply to that, because I do think some people get like program happy and they can apply too much work, too much stress, too much stimulus over time, which can then fuck the people up over time, right? So being able to apply that. Someone just looked in my window and made a face while I'm talking. Like, why do people do that? Don't look in my fucking window, make a face. I'm fucking
It's the
on a
worst.
conversation. It's like you're sitting in your job on a fucking call and I just started looking in your window, putting my fucking nipples on your glass. Like, what are we doing here?
Somebody's about to get choked out.
Oh
I
my
love
God.
it. No, like,
So those are the notes I wrote down. Like, I think you hit every point you needed to hit. And I think what people really need to do, 'cause the points that you hit were you brushed over them for the sake of time, but you had a lot of strong points that I think people need to go back and listen to a little bit more, especially the coaches out there who are trying to get a better grasp on programming. Because you think about fatigue management, progressive overload, phase potentiation, individual differences, exercise selection, right? Periodization. These things are so important to know. And when you know them, especially dealing on this topic of progressive overload and applying stress and how we're applying stress and what the goal is from the stress that we're putting on the person, the ability to recover from it to drive adaptation to get closer to the goals is so critical for development with our athletes.
yeah, dude, 100%. So when you just said that, thinking about, because I did kind of brush over it relatively quickly, but like the best way to learn this.
Fuck, I'm tired. Hold on. Sorry. I mean, mute it so you keep talking. I can't find the mute button. Sorry. My God.
Oh, that's even better. The best way to go about this is to learn it. Is to like go out and actually try it, right? Like trial by fire is the best way to do this. And something that doesn't actually get talked about in program design enough is less variability. So when you're creating these progressions, if you're changing 5 different things, say you're changing the sets and you're changing the reps and you're changing the load and the rest in between sets, you're changing the tempo, you're adding so much variability that it's hard to kind of like track this idea of progressive stimulus. And I've taken a big step back in how I program design. And when I'm thinking about progressive stimulus, I realistically am changing like one variable in my week to week progression so I can track my fatigue management throughout the weeks. And that's something I really don't think coaches take into account enough of like, are you reflecting on the last like 3-4 weeks of training and like what sort of feedback are you getting? And if you just change a bunch of different shit, you have no idea the thing that tipped the athlete over the edge, to, for lack of a better term, like being overtrained. So I think that's realistically one thing to think about. And then I also think we need to come to grips with the idea of a progressive stimulus by design is to help an athlete rewire and improve, maybe contractile quality or metabolic resiliency in conditioning pieces and things like that. And those things take frequent exposure. It's unrealistic to think you're going to do like one training session and you're fully going to, pull in that adaptation. These things take weeks and weeks and weeks over time. And that's why it's really important to control the variability in how you're progressing an athlete. Like when you set your week 1, you should have an idea of what it is you are progressing with that athlete from a stress standpoint, and then understand that these qualities take time to develop, right? It's just like anybody that's learned a skill or is attempting to learn a skill the first time, you're going to suck at it. You go back, you do it 2, 3, 4 times. Oftentimes, It's just your body learning how to process the input that's being put on it, and it becomes more efficient in that, right? So I think that's realistically one thing to think about. Don't be afraid to give your athletes the same shit for a couple weeks, especially if they're super new with it. Don't just change things for the sake of changing things. Some athletes are cringing and they're going to be like, oh my God, I have to do the same thing two weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row. But after they do that for a little bit, and, maybe with a little bit of encouragement, they actually start to see the progress. They're going to understand this idea that less variability, especially for your younger athletes, is the way to make true progression. And this idea of constantly varied is only hurting people that are newer to the game, and that's realistically a much higher level concept for advanced athletes.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts I want to shoot through, and we just don't have the time on this podcast. We have like 5 minutes left,
Give
but
the
I couldn't
people a
agree more.
nugget. Give the people something.
The priority stays the priority. I think people jump around way too much. You have to understand what the goal is, and the goal stays the goal. The goal can be a KPI inside of power strength, power gymnastics, mixed modal, monostructure work, but you got to keep that goal the goal. You got to understand that if you're a solid coach, I had this conversation with someone a while ago. I was going through a basic program for an individual, right? And it was a progressive overload, steady progression. Like, it's the same thing from week to week for 5 weeks. I'm like, yeah, that's why you're paying me $700 a month, is because I'm smart enough to keep it this fucking way for you, so you can actually drive adaptation. And I'm smart enough not to just put random shit up there to make you think like you're working, when in actuality, you're not doing anything but just getting fucking tired every single day, right? And that's the key thing for coaches understanding, and athletes. If there's not progression in there, you're not progressing. You're going to get good at doing random stuff, but you're not getting anywhere. If you have a goal, and which can be cool if that's your goal, right? Don't get me wrong. I say this all the time. If your goal is, hey, GPP and bounce around and have fun and free flow with fitness, and by all means, that's what you do, because you got to have fun. But if you have a targeted specific goal, then you got to progress that targeted specific goal, or else you're never going to get there. Less variance. Understand what variance is, right? Variance is not changing something up all the time. Like Ryan said, variance is sticking with something, progressing it within inside that training block 4 to 6 weeks, having a little back off, and then you might adjust the tempo, the intensity, the load. But it still goes back to the same point. The priority stays a priority, right? So all the variance that you put in there is still targeted around you achieving what that priority is, what that goal is, in order to move on to the next one and get you closer to where you need to be. And something else that's always been a thorn on my ass is when I see these programs of people trying to get better at CrossFit, and it's just random shit repeatedly. And I think this touches into the progressive stimulus. If you're trying to get better and increase your functional ceiling at doing pull-ups under fatigue, then you got to keep doing pull-ups under fatigue, but understand what your limiter is, and then progressing that stimulus from week to week until you're able to improve that limiter before you move on. But if you have a limiter of, let's call it complementary grip fatigue and upper body pulling exercises, and it really gets targeted at higher heart rates, and you're jumping all over the place and not targeting that limiter over a span of 4 or 6 weeks, then you're going to be at square one when it comes around to being able to do it inside of a competition setting. So the more intelligently that you can understand the principle of progressive overload and being able to progress that within inside of a stimulus situation, the better and closer you're going to get your athletes to having success for what their goals are.
Yeah, to wrap it up, it sounds
To
super
put a condom on
fancy.
this.
No, dude, we're raw dogging
What are those? What are those?
Raw dogging this podcast. I think for progressive overload sounds like a super fancy word. And then we start changing it and we start calling it progressive stimulus. It sounds even more complex. This realistically is not that complex of a training theory. It really comes down to, do you have an A to C plan? Do you know what the athlete, where the athlete is starting? Have you assessed? You know what you need to try to improve? And do you have some semblance of a structured, organized plan to get them somewhere without completely crushing them on the front end? Everything just can't be max effort all the time, despite what some want to think. There has to be fatigue management and a stepping stone approach to getting them to the end goal, if you really want them to stay in the game for any extended period of time.
Absolutely. Mic drop.
Love it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. you should say this now, the mentorship is closed till 2026. So as Jay and I kind of continue to go through these concepts and continue to kind of share some of the knowledge from the mentorship, if the mentorship is something you are interested in, I would start saving your pennies, go get a piggy bank, and get ready for Q1 2026. That's when the next one's gonna be launching.
Yeah, like if you want to be a better coach, do our mentorship. Like plain and simple, right? Like we put so much heart and soul into it, and we work with every person. We give feedback. We do a lot of things that you're not going to get in other areas. So we offer payment plans. I mean, let's fucking do it.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's the mentorship I wish I had when I first started coaching. That's what I made it for. I got the benefit of, 2 decades of experience with Jay, um, filling in all the holes, just plugging holes left and right. Yeah, it's the best one out there. I don't give a shit what anybody else says. There's a lot of places you can put your money in the mentorship game. Ours blows them all out of the water.
Facts.
So,
Facts.
till next time,
Till
check
next
out the
time.
Coach RX Podcast Network. Hit us
Be a
up.
good human. Follow Candace.
Hit us up with any questions. Hit us up in the DMs.
Fucking DM sliding. I feel like that can be really fun if we were young and single. Like I talk to
No.
some of these kids I train. It's like, I don't know, man. This dating game is like shooting fish in a barrel on both sides. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. We got to go. I feel like we're going to get crazy now. All right. Later, guys.